everyone. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God. Thank you for being here this evening as we celebrate the life of Brian Fox. My name is Deacon Eric, and I have the honor to be the MC for the celebration of life for Brian. Just a few things to start off with. As you may have heard, this is supposed to be a casual event, so we will have trains in the background. But anytime you need to get up and refresh your drink, get up and use the restroom, just stretch your legs, don't worry about it. The family is so appreciative of you guys being here and showing your support. And to show that we're in a casual environment here, I would like the family to hear that support on the count of 3 of how many people are here loving them here tonight. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. During Brian's final year of life, I had the privilege of growing closer to him and developing our friendship more in that last year than we previously bonded in the 8 years before that, knowing each other. I was able to witness the ways in which he loved his family, and in particular the way that he would fight for every minute he could spend with them. I enjoyed our conversations in the church parking lot during after-school pickup. I cherished the lunches we had at Kino's, where I could listen to Brian complain about the world. I laugh every time I think about our text conversations when he would frequent the hospital. It went something like this. Brian, I'd like to come visit. No response. Brian, I'm going to stop by if that's okay. No response. Brian, I'm going to ask Jen if it's okay to stop by. He would then respond, if you set foot into my room, I will call the police. Brian did not like being in the hospital. He was strong. He wanted to fight until the last moment. He didn't want others to see him sick. Everyone here today can look back to the past and imagine moments that you had with Brian. As your husband, as your dad, as your friend, your co-worker, and even your fraternity brother. The times that you spent together were precious. These memories will be with you forever. Whether it's on a printed picture or a vivid memory you can still recall. Let us all give thanks to God for these wonderful memories we have with Brian. Today, at this very moment, we are here grieving the loss of a great man. We all grieve in different ways. There can be hurt, confusion, questions, sadness, and I'm sure many other emotions as well. This is a hard day for everyone here. Tonight gives us time to reflect and to mourn the loss of Brian. But tomorrow will come. I know there are people from many different backgrounds here today. There are many differences that we can always talk about regarding our various beliefs. But today, let us focus rather on our similarities. Brian believed in loving others and loving God. We all believe the same teaching. We believe and have the hope that one day we will be reunited with Brian to enjoy eternity forever. Brian had many dreams and hopes during his life. Some of those he accomplished, and some others never got realized. Brian's time on earth has ended, but he leaves it in good hands. He leaves it in our hands. What are your hopes and dreams? How do you want to make this world a better place? We live in a world that is so fast-paced, where we can get food whenever we want it. We can travel on airplanes in moments. We have cell phones at the tip of our hands where we can get information instantaneously. Sometimes the only thing that makes us stop and reflect on life is death itself. Like a large flashing red light, death reminds me to look at my life, to bring up that long list of hopes and dreams that I want to work on. When I start reviewing the list, I realize how many of the areas I fall short in every day, and I know I'm all too familiar with making hopes and dreams that last a moment and are never realized. What is one thing in your life that you can make better or love more starting today? How can the example of Brian give us encouragement every day to be more Christ-like to others? As the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into months, we will search for ways to remember and honor Brian, your husband, your dad, your friend. Let us honor him by being Christ-like to others in all that we do. Let us ensure that we are reunited with Brian one day by sharing the love of Christ with others today. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God. We will be having a few people come up and share some stories and memories of Brian. After that, we'll be having a short slideshow, and then later on in the evening, we'll have an opportunity for an open mic for others to come up and share as well. The first person to come up is Brian's wife, Jennifer.
Brian and I met in 1998 on what he knew was a blind date, but what my dear friend Lisa Mora told me was just a few friends hanging out. That little white lie sparked 26 years of love, laughter, and too many memories to recount. I want to thank everyone for coming today. My family and I are blessed and are extremely grateful by everyone's outpouring of support. Every prayer, hug, card, flower, meal, gift card, contribution, everything has been truly appreciated, and we are humbled by it all. If I were to name everyone who has supported us during this time, we would be here for hours. My husband was a wonderful man, but by no means perfect. He could be grumpy and impatient and oh so sarcastic. But he was also extremely loving, devoted, strong, generous, and boy did he make me laugh. I am forever changed because of him, and I will miss him every day. I won't go into detail of all what Brian endured with his health issues for so long, but I want to say that my husband fought harder than I thought humanly possible to stay for as long as he could for his family. He often said, "I'm not sure I can do this anymore," but in his next breath he would say, "No, I will be here for my family." And he endured what was pretty close to torture to do that for as long as his body would let him. When he was diagnosed with one of his many obstacles last year, many of you did not know. This was not because he did not feel close enough to you. It was that he had planned to beat it, and in the meantime didn't want to be known as Sick Brian. He had been down that road before. His plan was to have a giant IB cancer party and invite everyone he knew. He said he'd tell his friends then. As he became weaker, he didn't want to discuss it because it made it more real. And lastly, he didn't want people to remember him in this state, but rather as they knew him before. So he kept his illnesses hidden from many people he cared about. Now you know Brian loved to give parties. I figure he probably threw about 100 parties, if not more, in his lifetime, including over 30 Halloween parties, which were his favorite. They started long before I met him as adult parties, but once our boys came along, he pivoted to kids' parties, and he thrived on them. And the boys' birthday parties. He would begin planning Matthew's March birthday party as soon as Christmas was over, and once Matthew's was over, he would start on Nick's July birthday party. He would ask each boy for their chosen theme, and he would spend months gathering items, making things, and of course his famous cookies, which were truly a labor of love. I cannot tell you how many craft items I have that I cannot use. His creativity was his gift, not mine. This was his outlet, as being a prosecutor did not allow for much creativity. But it did allow him to help people, which he truly loved doing, and he was particularly invested in his time in the domestic violence unit. Brian had a great respect for public safety, those who serve, and for the criminal justice system as a whole. In another life, he said he would have been a police officer. or party planner. Brian's love of parties stemmed from his love of getting people together. So to honor him today, we have thrown the party he planned to have a year and a half ago. Gathered people together as he loved doing. A celebration of life in its truest form. I chose to have it here because he enjoyed coming here. He enjoyed the community it provided. I know he is watching over us saying, wow, are you sure all these people are here for me? And to Jen, I can't believe you pulled this off. And the truth is, I didn't do this alone. So many people played a role in making this party, whether it was rolling up their sleeves, donation of items, financial contributions. Once again, if I listed everyone who helped, you'd be listening to me for hours. But I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I do, however, want to acknowledge a few people who saw my vision and ran with it today, as I was not in a place to do so myself. So thank you to all who helped in any way. With an extra special thanks to the Kwan family, who took the lead and coordinated almost everything. I could not have done this without you. The Aragon family, Goldman family, Heather Schley, the Maristage family, Mendoza family, Pena family, Rubalcaba family, and Summerfield family. I want to end my time on a quick story. You all know, how sarcastic Brian was. And when I would bring up the possibility of a third child, he would say, nope, not with me, with your next husband. Or various other jokes. One night at dinner with friends, when I brought it up again, he said he would fake his own death and get lost on a beach. As we all laughed, we built this story of people vacationing in Fiji and running into a man on a beach who they swore looked just like Brian, but was totally relaxed. Making cookies, woodworking, with a drink in his hand, feeling jovial and carefree. So for me, I like to believe that heaven for Brian is somewhere on a beach, building and baking, with a drink in his hand, feeling no pain, and most of all, at peace.
Next up is Lauren, Brian's brother.
Can you guys hear me? Am I, okay, I'm good, all right. So, I'm Brian's little brother. That's how most of you know me, except for my friends in the back who I'm sincerely appreciative have shown up. Jen, boys, I love you guys, and Nick, we loved having you in New Hampshire with us. Just awesome, you fit in perfectly. So, I know this is a mixed crowd. I know there are a bunch of kids in the audience. I tend to be really vulgar. It's gonna be a miracle if I don't throw an F-bomb in. But I'm a Jewish guy who got a bar mitzvah, like my brother did, on church grounds. So I will try to keep it clean. I can't guarantee anything. I was in the shower the other day listening to the Grateful Dead, and it's also going to be a miracle if I don't cry. So Phil Lesh sings in the song Box Brain, what a long, long time to be gone and a short time to be there. That song was written by Phil Lesh and Robert Hunter when Phil Lesh's father died, and when I listened to that song, I broke down in the shower. You know, I really hadn't gotten to a point where I had totally lost it, and there I'm like, I really hope my wife doesn't walk in. This is going to be really awkward with me crying in the shower. And there are a lot of relevant lines in that song, but that's not where our commonalities lay. So I kind of filed that away, and I moved on to some other topics. Brian and I, for those who know us, if you were going to find somebody who was relaxed and on the beach, that would be me. That is not Brian. We are always different people. He likes science fiction. I like sports. He wanted to build forts and play with Legos. I wanted to play with Legos, but mine were always a bunch of stuff on a flat board. His were like these majestic castles. I could never compete with that. He liked the Beatles and Billy Joel and all that. Like, that stuff was okay with me. They weren't my favorites. People thought we looked alike. I never thought we did. Feel free to disagree, whatever. Brian had what they call now main character energy. And that's obvious. When you look at it now, you look at the number of people here, everybody in here has some kind of a story, some kind of a connection with my brother, and it's probably something that you share alone with him. That you have a memory of him that doesn't involve a ton of other people, and that's really rare. Like, he was really good at building connections with people. He and I were 8 years apart. Sorry, Mom. We were I was the get back together baby. That's a really big gap between siblings. My mom used to refer to me as an afterthought. You talk about being valued. It meant that Brian was driving in free before I was in junior high. He was in a fraternity and could drink before I was in high school. So I was the little brother, and I wasn't always included in the fun, and sometimes my parents just protected me from it. But we really did have a bond, and I didn't realize how much I relied on him until he was gone. I also didn't know until a couple weeks ago that my friends looked at him as the cooler older brother, a role model of sorts, and it's just funny to me how we can impact the lives of other people without realizing it. And I think he probably realized the role he played, but I don't know that he realized how deep it was. And also, he gave us a really hard time. Paco, I saw you, and the first thing you said was nice hair. Brian would have given me a hard time for my hair, my shirt, and my shorts immediately before he said hello, in much the same way that my best friends do. He would have done the same thing to you guys immediately. I can always count on his thoughtful advice too. He loved helping people. It was in late June, and we were on the phone, and it was as his brother and somebody who I like to help people. It was really tough because I'm 2,700 miles away and I'm trying to help this guy and he just is not having it. And finally, I had something going on in my life that I needed some kind of counsel with, and I said something to him about it, and all of a sudden it was like this switch flipped. And old Brian was back. And I was like, wow, I should have thought of that a long time ago. And maybe I could have kept it around here longer, because that sort of gave him that purpose for me. Until he died, by the way, he always called me Butthead. I don't know why. I don't think he really ever called me by my first name. And my father wrote me, and I think he wrote something to you, Heather, after Brian died: your edgy sense of humor, your cynical streak, the twinkle in your eye, but mostly we're going to miss your generous and loving heart. You are a shining star in the sky, and we're going to make sure that star never stops twinkling. He and I also shared something unique for those who don't know us. He and I had inflammatory bowel disease, and I still remember visiting in the hospital when he was in law school. I was in college. He was really sick, wound up having major surgery. He recovered, and he found a way to graduate number 2 in his law school class, which I always found amazing for a guy. When he was 13 and I was 5, he was asking me how to spell words. To finish number 2 in his law school class, kind of a big deal. And about that illness, we both had surgery. We both wound up missing some parts along the way, and of course, spending more time in the bathroom than most. And so every birthday, what could I count on from Brian? A card that featured farts or poop. Or gross things that you can't talk about in polite company, which this isn't, because he really wouldn't have wanted it that way anyway. He was not always polite company, but that was something that we loved about him. He was passionate about many things. He loved Jen deeply, loved the boys so much, and was so dedicated to them. Everything they had going on, everything you guys had going on, was always the priority. He was the guy that you could call if you needed help moving. And I took that too far once. I was moving from Kansas to California, and he helped me move from Kansas to California. And if you've ever ridden in a car with Brian, he got a speeding ticket along the way, which is not surprising, because how he drove, he probably should have been in jail. One time, Jen will remember this, we made it back from Vegas in 3.5 hours, and I think it took my wife about a week before she was okay after that. And after that, I don't think she ever wanted to get in a car with Brian again. So Brian, oddly enough, wanted to be the first one to get me drunk. So he did at a wedding. Why would you want to get your younger brother drunk? I think I was 16. The reason was because he wanted me to be in safe hands. He wanted me to know what it felt like when I had somebody who could take care of me in that situation. He fed me Midori sours. I looked like I was about 13. I have no idea why anybody was serving me anything. This was way shorter when I read it the first time, so I promise I'll be quick. He probably made cookies for half the people in this place. And if you asked, he would always find a way. He loved being able to give himself. It was a labor of love, as Jen said. And it's a gift being able to show your love in so many ways to so many people. And he had that gift. I don't, to Jen's point, don't get me wrong, he could be a pain in the neck, impatient, short-tempered, particularly in traffic. And the little acts that he did for people, though, really, it's amazing, because he could be short-tempered, but it's like, you don't really remember that. You just remember the great things that he did for everybody. One of our favorite commonalities was music. And I wound up seeing Jimmy Buffett, I think, 13 or 14 times. Half the times were with him, largely due to Paco hooking us up with the Corona tent back in the day. And it meant beers and tacos. So, kind of like tonight. Then we'd go into the show, and once again, we were wasted away in Margaritaville. So, Buffett always closed with really meaningful songs. The last time that he and I saw him together was 2016, the last time that he played Irvine Meadows. And he played a song that's not as well known as his closer. It's a great one, and I think I was sober by the time that it played. It's called Lovely Cruise. So the end of the song goes like this. These moments we're left with, may you always remember, these moments are shared by few. And those harbor lights, they're coming into view. We bid our farewell much too soon. So drink it up, this one's for you. Honey, it's been a lovely cruise. Love you, Brian.
Next up is going to be Brian's son, Nick.
Hi, my name is Nick, and I want to thank everyone for coming to honor my dad. My dad did a lot for me and my brother Matthew. He made a huge impact on my life by volunteering to be my soccer coach and Cub Scout leader. He did these things without me even asking. He also came to all my sports games, from soccer to baseball to flag football and a lot of basketball games. He was always there saying, "Go Foxy." My dad would take up me and my brother's interests instead of trying to get us interested in his. For me, he knew I loved sports and especially basketball. He took the time to learn about it so he could talk to me about it and even took me to games. For my brother, he learned all about NASCAR and took him to these races. These were not his things he was interested in, but he did them for us and even grew to like him. My dad gave us the best parties. He also did a lot for my school. He volunteered and he also made cookies for my classes, and everyone would ask me, "When is your dad making more cookies?" because they loved them and they wanted more. I would always come to my dad for math help because my mom, you could say, is not the best at it. And that led to a lot of late night, just the two of us. Every night before bed, my dad would say to me and Matthew, "I love you yesterday, today, and always too."
Next is Mark Maristich, his fraternity brother.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? Beautiful night here, just looking over the valley here. Warm blue skies, sun setting, breathtaking views here. It's a fitting and wonderful place to gather here together as family and friends. The sadness will always be here, but tonight is the night that we're to celebrate the wonderful and amazing life of Brian Fox. Brian is with us here right now, in spirit, in our hearts, in our love and fond memories. He is part of us and always will be. I feel truly fortunate to have been friends with Brian, who I first met at Cal State Fullerton, where he was a fraternity brother of mine and president of Delta Chi. In fact, at a rush party that Brian hosted at his family's house 38 years ago, my wife Vicki and I had our first date. And it must have been a good party because here we are. That was also infamously known as the second time that Lauren got drunk. You set yourself up for that one. A few years after that, Brian worked at an ad agency and gave me a tour, which got me thinking about advertising as a career, a path that I followed. Brian then led to becoming an attorney, and to marriage with kids with Jennifer, to Matthew and Nick's birthday parties, pool parties, barbecues, and Halloween decorating and parties. holiday treats, and Brian's baked goods. The most artistically created, delicious, and festival homemade cookies you've ever seen, and they were very tasty. But life was much more than a party for Brian. There was a hard reality that Brian faced every day, serving as a highly respected prosecutor for the city of Anaheim, fighting on behalf of the victims of domestic violence and elder abuse, standing strong, helping others, standing strong for them, helping others to stand strong for themselves and supporting them. As a champion of justice, he was also an example of bravery and empathy for his students, teaching future generations of prosecutors. But most importantly, Brian was an incredible family man and such a wonderful husband for Jennifer and father to Matthew and Nick. He was always there for them, truly cherishing Jennifer as love of his life, always there for the boys in sports, school, projects, activities, and good times and challenging times. That was one thing about Brian. He always showed up. He always showed up, gave it his best, and was always there for his family. After moving to Yorba Linda, one of the most interesting things I learned about Brian was his unique ability and skill with building things. With his own hands, he built a storage shed, new closet space, an outdoor beverage center, barbecue gazebo, vacuum furniture, and put in sprinklers and grew lawn from seed. I helped him on that one. In an odd sense, Brian's ability to build and grow things is a metaphor for his life, with building a wonderful community surrounding his own family, which is present here today. What I miss most about Brian would be his laughing and joking. His wonderfully dry sense of humor was something in itself to celebrate, especially on the golf course. That was funny in itself. In our many hilarious random run-ins at the paint aisle at Home Depot, or buying toilet paper at Costco, or buying frozen meat off the back of a truck, or at school events, or random things, will be greatly missed. One of the small things I've learned from Brian is to celebrate the small stuff. It's really important to do that, and just to have fun. So Brian left us too early. Jennifer will always be here for you and the boys. Matt and Nick, your father was an incredible person and is an incredible person. Be strong knowing he'll always be with you in your spirit and in your hearts. The measure of a man is an expression to represent the person's character and positive impact on others. And Brian should be seen as a measure to aspire to. There's no finer example of a person than Brian. I feel honored as his friend. So here's to Brian and the love of parties. Let's all have fun here tonight and celebrate Brian.
And Moss is going to come up, and this is a friend from law school.
My name is Ann Moss, and I met Brian back in 1992 on our first day of law school. We met in the administrative office after our first class. It was the shared trauma of our civil procedure class, I think, that brought us together. And when I met Brian, I realized two things immediately. He was intimidatingly smart and wickedly sarcastic, and that was the start of our friendship. You know, going to law school with Brian, I learned immediately that he would make an amazing attorney. He had all the makings. I mean, he was a fierce competitor, he was hardworking, he was disciplined and intelligent. From the beginning, he wanted to prosecute criminal cases, and it's just so great that he got to have that career with and a successful career with the city of Anaheim. And it's no surprise that he would go on to teach. He worked at the law library, and because most of us did not share his intelligence, he was always willing to help us, always, helping us study or practice arguments. He was just so generous with his time, and he was so confident in his intelligence, but he didn't flaunt it. And while he had a great career, He was more than a great attorney. He was a good son and brother, and he was a dear friend and a wonderful husband and a loving father. And when I look back at that time in law school, which I will remind you that we were in our 20s, and it was pre-goatee, and I just, and we were talking about it in the car right here, just how fun it was. And you had touched upon how he brought people together. Brian's roommates, living with his mom, and he brought his roommates together. And then, we had our law school friends and then other friends, and it just became this wonderful group of people who were so supportive. And at a time in our lives where to have fun and have that sense of humor and that sense of community really was a lot due to Brian and his bringing us together. And I would be remiss if we didn't mention Jeremy, his dear friend, who's no longer with us. That was part of that group. And one of the things that I remember about Brian is he just had a great sense of humor. He could totally laugh at himself. At that time, I don't think any of us could take ourselves too seriously. But he was just really fun and like a fun Bobby in our group. We would get in trouble in the law library for laughing too hard. We played really juvenile pranks on one another. And one of the things that I kept coming back to a lot was his smile. He had that awesome smirk that he would give you right before he was going to hit you with a good sarcastic zinger, and then he would hit you with it, and then he'd laugh at himself, and then we'd laugh, and I just kept remembering it, just how well he could just deliver a good joke or a good dig, and at that time it's just what we needed to kind of get through our day. And just as we've been thinking about that time, it was so fun, and just a couple things that we remember from that time, like his, need for Diet Coke all the time, his obsession, and we drank a lot of tequila, not Diet Coke and tequila together, but separately. And I don't know if a lot of you know this, but Brian was a really good dancer. He loved to dance, and he was always willing to go to the clubs with us girls and people around here, Chester Drawers and Newport or whatever it was, or it was like a law school dance, or we would just start jamming in the living room of our little apartments, and he would just totally cut it up. I mean, he could dance. We took a lot of road trips to Palm Springs and Big Bear. We went to New Orleans, and that was a very fun, memorable trip. Funny, I have in my notes too that he loved to throw a good party, Halloween, Christmaka, that he loved. He loved decorations, and I understand that grew into a lot of lawn ornaments, right? He liked to have a lot of stuff in his lawn, and so that was, those are fun memories. In the parties that he threw, he had famous, someone reminded me of his Jell-O shots that he used to make, or lemon drop shots that were always included. But he always loved parties and wanted everybody to have a good time. We also went to Jimmy Buffett together, so that was a love of his, Jimmy Buffett. Going to the movies, and his love for Star Wars and later the Marvel movies. And on Thursday nights, we used to run home. I remember this in law school. We used to run home to watch Seinfeld and Friends. And then we would spend the rest of the week quoting it to each other back and forth, laughing about it, just could not wait. And then the next thing, he was a foodie, and I was a foodie too, and so it was really great, because he was always willing to go get a meal, and I believed that his love for mi casa never wavered. I feel like that was something that kind of continued over the years. But in all the fun, he was also a very steady presence. He was really free of drama, and he was always a true gentleman, making sure, we got home. But he would always remind us of any embarrassing moments that would happen the night before, for sure. He didn't date much in law school, but that was by choice, because there was some ladies that were interested in Brian, but he actually had a grand plan. He was going to finish law school, pass the bar, and meet a girl. And my gosh, did he do that? And I remember one night, Jeremy and Brian and I think we're at like all you can eat sushi in Lido Island, kind of a ritual that we did, and he had told I met a librarian named Jennifer, and I can't remember the specifics, and you just said it was a blind date, I can't remember that, but I remember he had a goofy look on his face, and he was smitten kitten from the beginning. And he was just instantly drawn to Jennifer, and as we all know, that she would become the absolute love of his life. And I would love the anniversary posts that he would post on your anniversary about how he couldn't believe that you would reciprocate that. And he was so in love, he learned to cook. And I thought that was really cool because I was still eating Hot Pockets and he was making cream cheese wontons appetizers and macadamia nut crusted chicken. And I was like, macadamia nuts, like that's really fancy, right? And then he would make those cookies that you would see and just, you know, and those were just amazing. And obviously we all have the kind of the same thing, right? Because he was just an amazing person. So it was just really an honor to witness his love for Jennifer. And it was just so... Am I done? Okay. Sorry, I'm almost done. But the love he had for Jennifer also made him a great father. And we were all kind of pregnant at relatively about the same time. And I remember Brian was just so nervous to be a dad. But he really embraced it. And there's just no doubt that he was going to be a great dad and that he did turn out to be a great dad. And who didn't love those Facebook posts on Christmas Eve about assembling something that was like supposed to take an hour and then it took him like 10 hours or 5 hours and he was up all night, and that always made me laugh. But that's the type of person Brian was. I think we all can appreciate how proud he was of his family, and when I would speak to him over the phone, you could just hear the pride in his voice when he would talk about the boys and Jennifer, about just anything about school or sports or something, just even about the day. He just took so much pride and joy and just had so much unconditional love for his family. And, you know, even though we didn't connect as often as we should have over these last couple of years, when we did talk, it was as if no time had passed. And we would just fall into kind of the rhythm of old friends. And that's just the testament of the person he was. He was so caring and giving and wonderful. And when I was trying to think of some way to just sum him up, I think he was just a really good person. He was just one of the good guys. And I just feel really blessed to have known him, and that we all, so many people here got to experience him in our lives. It's just truly blessed, and he will live in our hearts. And in honor of Jimmy Buffett, which I think we established he really loved, I am going to quote, I found this quote from one of the songs, He Went to Paris, and I think it kind of summed it up for him. And it says, some of it's magic, some of it's tragic, but I had a good life all the way. And I do feel that about Brian. And we will just really miss him. And thank you.
Deborah Goldman, a longtime family friend, if you want to come up.
Stomach's in my throat, and I'm reading because, as I mentioned about Jeremy, I am Jeremy's wife. Okay. Brian loved me. How did I know this? Early on in our friendship, he used to tease me and sometimes pick on me constantly. I was assured that that meant he felt close to me. I met Brian the same night I met my husband, Jeremy. They were roommates and law school buddies. Jeremy was lucky enough to have met a lifelong friend in Brian, and he would have been up here giving this speech if he were still here and able to. But the thing is, I know Brian and I had a special friendship too. He and I actually had a lot in common, but more on that in a bit. The night I met Brian in April of 1998, I remember thinking, but a nice roommate. At the time, we were all searching for our life partners. And you're gonna see a lot of themes here, so bear with me. In October of 1998, I got to experience what would become the first of many Halloween parties. Brian waited all night for this girl he swore we had to meet, Jennifer, who never showed up. Okay, we learned later that she had prior plans, but we thought, well, if she didn't show up, she might not be the one. How wrong we were. Jennifer perfectly completed our little foursome, and our friendships grew to a new level. We spent many years going on date nights together, vacationing, celebrating each of our birthdays every single year. One of our funniest memories of traveling together was a time we went to Big Bear. It started snowing pretty hard, and we had just arrived and had not had the opportunity to get groceries yet. It was dinner time, and we were hungry. Jen and I sent the guys to get pizza, but first they had to go get snow chains on the SUV. Jen and I watched the two of them from the comfort of our dry, warm, inside window while they struggled to get the job done. What a sight. Here were two great lawyers who could prosecute and defend like the best of them, but were bumping their heads and struggling while Jen and I laughed. I know it doesn't sound very nice of us, but it was such a funny sight. They finally figured it out and left and ended up coming back with a frozen pizza instead. I guess that was our punishment for laughing. We were loyal and true friends to each other and had so many laughs together. Then we all had kids and the chaos grew. The Halloween parties that were once adult themed now included bounce houses and juice boxes. And Brian started making his amazing and delicious homemade cookies. Let's talk about these cookies for a minute because we haven't talked about them enough. I think I truly knew Brian was my friend for life when he agreed every single year to make cookies for me for my daughter's birthday, as well as 3 of my kids' bar and bat mitzvahs. Now, did he give me grief in that special way only Brian could? Of course. But again, that's how I knew Brian loved me. Brian especially enjoyed making girl-themed cookies because it was different than all the boy-themed ones he got to make for his sons. Themes ranged from Hello Kitty, mermaids, Cinderella's glass slipper, the Eiffel Tower, and the list goes on. He showed his love through his cooking and baking, and our family was often the recipient of that love. Brian had us over for nearly every holiday at one point or another and fed us too many meals to count. We were very lucky. With kids in tow, our family vacations expanded to include a Disney cruise, numerous trips to Maui, including the Aulani, and of course our yearly winter trip to Big Bear. Jennifer and I have reminisced that Big Bear was really fun when we went as couples, but really became great fun once we started bringing the kids. For years and years, we continued to go to Big Bear and share a cabin together. I'm so grateful for our final trip to Big Bear that our families took in August of 2020, about 3 months before my husband passed away. Our families were extended families to each other, and our kids grew up as siblings in many ways. Brian was our go-to friend whenever we were in need. Once when we got in a hit-and-run car accident, we immediately called Brian to come help us and pick up the kids from our crushed car and bring them home while we dealt with the police. Do you know Brian got from Anaheim to Irvine in about 6 minutes? I kid you not. He must have literally had wings on his car. And while usually I would be terrified to drive with him or behind him, this time his speedy driving was such a blessing. This time. He even brought the kids McDonald's to eat while he watched them. The night Jeremy passed away, Brian was one of my first calls, and once again he and Jennifer sped over to my house to sit with my kids and provide comfort. These are just a few of many instances I could recount that show just how important Brian was to our family. Okay, let me now return to what I said at the beginning. Brian and I actually had quite a bit in common. The 4 of us used to joke with each other that Brian and I had a more similar, more intense personality, and Jeremy and Jen were more alike with a more laid-back personality. Well, for better or for worse, this made me feel very connected to Brian. We were, for example, party planning, organizing a trip, arranging a get-together, making holiday cards, planning our individual Thanksgiving Black Friday shopping spree, discussing what we found at said spree, or any one of a number of activities for which we elected ourselves to be in charge. Jeremy and Jen were only too happy to let us steer the ship in order to get various tasks completed. We loved to consult with each other, and we found that to be actually rather fun. But on the professional side, Brian and Jeremy loved to talk shop. We'd often go out to dinner, and Brian and Jeremy would spend the entire time discussing various elements of cases or court-related news. They could talk for hours. Brian told me that with Jeremy gone, he really mourned not having his buddy to talk to share with, and to consult with. I wished I could have provided that space for Brian, but of course I could not. Brian and I had a few very private talks toward the end. He expressed he had always wanted to do more for me and for my kids. While I expressed that he had done more than enough for us, it warmed my heart that Brian was still thinking about us, even when he was very sick. That was just the kind of guy Brian was. He cared more for others, often more than he cared for himself. He lived for his family and friends. He lived to do good work in his community, to provide support as a loving husband to Jennifer, to be an involved father to Matt and Nick, an attentive son, brother, and uncle. He brought family and friends together even when he felt like his body was failing him. He pushed himself to live to the bitter end, not for himself, but for all of us. I will miss him, from his teasing to his cookies and the love and friendship these things represented. I and my family will miss all of him. Thank you.
Another close family friend, Fernando Aragon, please.
Like Eric said, some of you know me. For those who don't, I'm Fernando Aragon. I met Brian back I met Brian back in 2015 when Nick and Andrew, my son, became preschool friends. Move over here. We were both new to St. Francis. We were trying to navigate the situation, and we were eager to make friends. Little did we know that our friendship would span almost a decade. I'm just sorry that it didn't last longer. Despite being a few years older than me, Brian and I became instant friends. Our love for food, admittedly inappropriate jokes, and spending time with our boys. Over the next several years, we spent countless hours together. Whether, which we've established, Brian's famous parties, school activities, date nights with our wives, or Brian coaching Andrew and Nick in soccer. We suffered through Cub Scouts, competing to build the fastest derby cars, teaching our kids how to sell a $40 box of popcorn. I don't know how we did that. Camping in the cold or camping on the USS Midway. We would constantly complain about our wives' date nights, and we even tried to plan our own guys' nights. Although it just turned out to be the guys, Doritos, beer, and jalapeno poppers. We still had a good time. Through it all, I could always count on Brian to make me laugh. Whether he would have a witty comeback to one of my stupid jokes or one of his own. Brian and I laughed a lot. He had a great sense of humor and a great laugh. Even in the last year when he was in and out of the hospital, he would make me laugh. I also knew that Brian was always down to try new restaurants or cuisine. We regularly shared our Yelp finds and met to try new taco shops. We even traveled to Mexico with our families to try the authentic ones. While the food was the reason that we met, I will always remember our conversations about life, work, being fathers, husbands, and how to manage it all. Brian was fiercely loyal. and a quintessential family man. He loved Jen and his boys above all. If they were happy, he was happy. He adored his mom, Elaine, and regularly shared stories about his brother and sister and their family. He was equally proud of them. He was also extremely brave. Many people don't know that Brian was struggling for more than half of his life with a chronic illness, and despite all of the pain it brought him, he rarely let it interfere with being a devoted father, husband, and prosecutor. I admire Brian for many things: his devotion to his family, his passion for doing the right thing, his involvement with his boys' lives. But what I will miss the most are his texts to me, checking in how I'm doing when he is struggling with so much. I am forever grateful for our friendship, and I truly miss Brian dearly. Jen, Nick, and Matthew, thank you for giving me the honor of speaking today, and please know that you are family, that we love you, and we were always here for you.
We're going to be playing a slideshow, just a few pictures of Brian's life and the people that were in it, and I'm sure we're going to get some pictures of parties and cookies as well. After the slideshow, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break and get some tacos. There's going to be 2 lines over here, drinks, socializing, and about 15-20 minutes after that, maybe 30, we'll see how it goes. We'll come back, bring your food and everything, but anybody else that would like to share, we're going to kind of have an open mic, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. While our IT department is getting this ready, why don't we do our prayer for the meal, and we can get ready for that as well. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Thank you, God, for bringing us here this evening as we celebrate the life of Brian Fox. Thank you for the life of Brian Fox. Thank you for his presence in our life. Thank you for his warm smile. Thank you for all the gifts that he had and shared with us. Our prayers are especially with the Fox family tonight and all those who are closest to him. We thank you for this opportunity to celebrate, though.
And Michelle and his step.
We thank you for the opportunity to be here and enjoy a party together. We pray for the food. We thank you for the food. We thank you for the hands that prepared it. We pray especially for those who are without food tonight. And we look forward to celebrating until we get kicked out from here tonight. Amen.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind. Hang it on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos of memories and their skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. you at the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I help you at the time of your life. Hope when you take that jump, you don't feel the fall. Hope when the water rises, you build a wall. Hope when the crowd screams out, you're screaming your name. Hope if everybody runs, you choose to stay. Hope that you fall in love and it hurts so bad. Yeah. Only way you can know, you give it all you had. And I hope that you don't suffer, but take the pain. Hope when the moment comes, you'll say, I did it all. I did it all. On every second, this world could give. I saw so many places, the things that I did. With every broken bone, I swear I lived. Hope that you spend your days, but they all add up. And when that sun goes down, hope you raise your cup. Oh, I wish that I could witness all your joy and all your pain. Until my moment comes, I'll say, I did it all. I did it all. Every second this world could give. I saw so many places, the things that I did. With every broken bone, I swear I lived. Daddy, I'm afraid. Won't you stay a little while? Keep me safe, 'cause there's monsters right outside. Daddy, please don't go. I don't wanna be alone, 'cause the second that you're gone, they're gonna know. Before he went to bed, he grabbed my hand and said, just 'cause I'm leaving, it don't mean it. I won't be right by your side. When you need me, you can't see me in the middle of the night. Just close your eyes and say a prayer. It's okay, I know you're scared when I'm not here, but I'll always be right there. Even though I'm leaving, I ain't going nowhere. Dad will be late, and Uncle Sam don't like to wait. He's got a big old plane that's gonna take me far away. I know I act tough, There's a churning in my gut, 'cause I just can't call you up when things get rough. Before I left, he hugged my neck and said, just 'cause you're leaving, it don't mean that I won't be right by your side. When you need me, you can't see me in the middle of the night. Just close your eyes and say a prayer. It's okay, I know you're scared I might be here, but I'll always be right there. Even though you're leaving, I ain't going nowhere. Daddy, I'm afraid. Won't you stay a little while? I never thought I'd see the day I had to say goodbye. Daddy, please don't go. I can't do this on my own. There's no way that I can walk this road alone. Daddy grabbed my hand and said, just 'cause I'm leaving, it don't mean that I won't be right by your side. When you need me and you can't see me in the middle of the night, just close your eyes and say a prayer. It's okay, boy, I ain't scared, I won't be here, but I'll always be right there. Even though I'm leaving, I ain't going nowhere. I ain't going nowhere.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, the things we've been through, that I'll be standing right here talking to you about another path. I know we love to hit the road and laugh, but something told me that it wouldn't last. Had to switch up, look at things different, see the bigger picture. Those were the days, hard work forever pays. Now I see you in a better place. How can we not talk about feeling when feelings all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
First you both go out your way and the vibe is feeling strong. And what's small turn to a friendship turn to a bond, and that bond will never be broken, and love will never get lost. And when brotherhood come first, then the line will never be crossed. Established it on our own when that line had to be drawn, and that line is what we reach, so remember me when I'm gone. How can we not talk about feeling what feelings all that we got? Everything I went through, you were standing there by my side, and now you gon' be with me for the last ride.
Let the light guide your way. Yeah. Hold every memory as you go, and every road you take will always lead you home. Oh, It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see